Deadman Driving 15, 10, 11. Talking about the story writing in Little Women, 1994. It is Sunday morning. So overall the story writing is pretty good. I'd say it's between 66 and 100%. I mean, it's not a traditional. It doesn't exactly have the same kind of classical story structure as a lot of other movies do. Because the character doesn't really start out as having a stated mission that they have to complete, or have like a big obstacle that they're trying to overcome. It's kind of just more, that character has multiple goals in life. They're trying to figure out what those goals are. There's multiple other characters who are trying to do the same thing. But, it's not like, there's not really an antagonist in the movie. Sometimes the main character can kind of be the antagonist or the protagonist, because, trying to kill your younger sibling kind of doesn't really set you up as a protagonist. Then again, hey, who hasn't tried to kill their younger sibling, right? So, you've got a lot of plot lines kind of just going along the same forward path, and it's, I guess if you have to say that there's an antagonist or a goal, it's just kind of to survive to adulthood, or just to live life, and maybe a quest for happiness. But it's not really something that's stated, like, by any of the characters. It's just kind of something that's suggested. Is it well told, though? It's never confusing what's going on. It's not really boring what's going on. You kind of understand what the character's motives are. I don't think that it really camps at any point. In other words, it doesn't just park on a certain segment just because, and feel like it's just dragging on and on. It's like, oh please, this scene should have ended like 5 minutes ago. You don't get any of that with this movie. In spite of the fact that there aren't those... What is this? What is this? Can it be? Is this road? Can I take that? Might have had like a detour in place finally, or like a shorter road, like a shortcut. I don't want to take that because I don't know if it actually goes all the way through. It might just be to get access to that park. Maybe Maybe I'll try to take that on the way home. But actually, I don't know what I'm doing after church. So I don't know if I'd even be able to do it then. So I don't know if I'll be traveling back the same way. I think it's a pretty good, entertaining story, and it's got good writing. There aren't any characters that I want left out. You know, if there's not really something that's going on as much in another character's life, like the older sister, I'll just call her May again, because I don't remember what her name is, and I didn't bother to look it up in between now and the previous podcast. You know, she doesn't really have as eventful of a life. She just, you know, you see who her character is. She gets married before any of the other ones. You don't really even see a whole lot of details in that marriage, and Joe doesn't really try to stop that marriage. You know, she understands why her sister is after that teacher, because, you know, they both have the same kind of stern, modest values. And why isn't my map thing telling me where to go? Maybe it's because the camera overrides. Still recording? If it is. Yes, it is. Alright, you know, but they don't really put a whole lot of focus. They give that story as much attention as it needs, and, you know, you get to see a contrast between her character and Joe's, and the other girls in the family. You know, you get to see what kind of a role she plays in the family. Same goes for the mother. You know, you see that she's a strong force holding the family together, but she realizes that the girls, you know, she's not really doing that as a willing choice. Like, she doesn't really want to be a single mother. She's just having to do that because of her husband, and she's totally in support of her husband. And loves her husband a lot, you know, so it's not like she's, you know, thinking that she wants to be an independent woman permanently. She's just trying to do this until her husband can get back. But, you know, she doesn't have a lot going on in her story. She's just trying to keep things together husband. And for her girls. And she doesn't have a lot going on with her story. It just kind of changes as events change. She's a fairly static character, as is May. know, Beth is a static character. Amy is not really a static character. She does change a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just kind of mostly the circumstances around her or what ends up changing her. Jo is definitely a more dynamic character. You know, because she spends most of her life struggling with what it is that she wants and what her goals are and what it is that she's after. And she finally finds it, but it's not exactly what it was when she started out. You know, it's kind of, you know, she thinks that it's kind of like, you know, Dorothy, you know, from Wizard of Oz, where, you know, what she wants is something that's out there, but it's not like Dorothy in that she's aware that, you know, it's something that she's had all along, plus other things that she's picked up along the way. You know, she ends up becoming a writer, but she also ends up, you know, because that was kind of her big goal starting out a little bit, but she also ends up becoming you know, it's hinted that she's going to be a teacher, and that and she also ends up becoming, you know, someone who, you know, she's the wife of Professor Bear, and right, and Mr. Speedy. Okay, let's go, dude. What are you gonna be doing? 85? So I was already going 80, so really how much faster are you going to be going? You're going 75, so you didn't really even want to go that much faster than me. You just wanted to be in front of me. I think it's only a matter of time before my screen that I've got sitting on my leg starts burning the flesh off of it. It heats up a lot. And I can't turn off the screen, as I've stated previously. gut feeling regarding the story. Moves quickly enough, doesn't really have that much in it. It's not, I mean, it's got those anachronistic moments, but I think that's more of a function of editing than it is of story writing. I mean, fundamentally, Little Women has a good story. It's just a matter of how well it's going to be told. I think I should probably get into it now because I kept putting off when I was going to talk about it. It is a dramatic movie. Whereas previous incarnations of it were just kind of very light romantic comedies, or just, kind of more focusing on the lighter elements of the story, and just kind of making a novelty of the time period, and just kind of treating it like, hey, wow, did you see this? Did you know that people used to live in the 1850s like this? Isn't this neat? And everything was great and nifty back then, and it's all special. It's like, no, this is, 1984 tells it like, this is how people actually lived back then, and it wasn't all happiness. There were rough elements to it, and, she's a real person and had real difficulties. Even though I don't think that she was. I mean, Louise May Alcott's life doesn't mirror Joe's. She's a fictional character, but, a believable fictional character. So the movie creators treat it more like a Jane Austen novel or a Charles Dickens story. Because stuff is way more serious. And they're focusing more, it's a much more character-driven story than the other ones are. The other ones tend to be more story-driven, and this one does have, story as a strong influence to the character's actions. Amy turns out the way that she does because she has to leave and live with Aunt Marge. Probably should get over. Okay, I don't have to after all. Beth ends up, spoiler alert for an 1850s novel, Beth dies. That has an impact on Joe and all the other characters. It ends up bringing the characters back together, at the end of the movie. And they have to deal with the consequences of that. At the same time that they're trying to live. And it affects Lori, it affects Amy, who's overseas, and her relationship with Lori. I didn't even know they were building a movie theater there. Escape. That reminds me of the Eddie Murphy thing, where he's Mr. Robinson, like Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Ex-con. Escape. Okay. Okay, so, what was I saying? Something about the story, something about events. Oh, yeah. So it's much more character-driven. You know, I mean, the events are happening, but, you know, the variance between the characters affects how they react to something. And, you know, it's much more concerned about their reaction to events than about the events themselves. So I think that the story, I think that makes a story way better than one that's purely event driven. So I'd have to say the story is really good. It's not that that's you know, it's not that a story which is comedic is inherently inferior to a movie that that's told dramatically, because that's really not the case. Actually, I prefer comedies over dramas the vast majority of the time. When I'm watching stuff on YouTube or looking at stuff on Facebook, I really favor stuff that's more comedic than anything. I like, when I'm watching something that's sci-fi, I like the stuff that's funny rather than the stuff that's serious most of the time. And I'm not saying that, that comedy, it's like, oh, well, it was funny, but, because it's funny, you're exchanging story quality for, for telling a story well. No, look, that's what the Oscars do. That's not what I do. I don't care if a story is comedic or not. I care if it's well told. I think that the Katharine Hepburn version was a well-told story. I'm just gonna go out and park in the furthest imaginable space. I can park right next to the cop car. Oops, this is not the furthest imaginable space. What even is that? It's like not even at 3/4 of space. So, what do I give the story? Is this still going? Okay. I would have to say it's better than 66%. This is getting really hot. I'd probably say it's better than 72%. I think it's at least 86%, maybe 92%. It's just, I mean, it's got everything going for it. It doesn't really have any weak points in the storytelling. You know, it's just a really good story. It's really interesting, and it seems like the storytelling in it is better than the Katharine Hepburn version. Just because, okay, Katharine Hepburn was really good as Jo, but a lot of the other actors weren't. And even the side plots of the other characters weren't told as well. In this, they're told believably, and by the way, you don't have to necessarily have to have things be realistic in order to have a good story. You just have to have those side plots told well. You know, everything doesn't have to be like things really were. You know, there's that, you know, Annie Hall is a movie that doesn't have realistically told story, but it's a good story still. What did I even do with my phone clip? I guess it's in my bag somewhere. So I would have to say the storytelling is close to 100%. I think maybe just 99 because it's got some anachronistic moments, but overall, it's a good story. Watch it for the story, if nothing else.